Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Monday edition of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast. I am your host for this old school edition, Andy York. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us. Whether this is your first time or you've been with us since the beginning, we really appreciate you tuning in and listening to us each and every week. If you're watching our beautiful faces on the bodyslam.net YouTube channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment down below, like all of that fun YouTube stuff that you have to do for the algorithms and everything else. We really appreciate it. If you're listening to this on a more traditional audio format, make sure you leave a rate and review there as well and share it around with your friends. We want to send a special thank you to SportsWire for letting us be on their platform and allowing us to broadcast our show there as well on every Monday, Wednesday, and every day in between. Basically as well, we love being on there, and they have a great plethora of shows on their channel as well, so you definitely want to go check them out and listen to them as well. But I couldn't do this episode alone. I had to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend himself, the phenomenal host, Mr. Chris Belcher. How you doing, man?
Man, that was a cool intro.
Thank
Can we record that and just play it every time we start a show? Oh man, that's pretty fun. Man, I'm doing great. This is not a super old school episode, but it's going back in time a little bit for a wrestler that is no longer with the WWE.
Yeah. But he's still wrestling and still taking over the world, it seems
Very much so.
Very much so. We had the privilege of seeing him a couple weeks ago by this point in AEW. We're going to be talking about Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, but specifically Daniel Bryan's build-up to WrestleMania 30 as we are in WrestleMania season, probably one of the greatest WrestleManias of all time. I mean, there's a lot of arguments for 17 and some other ones. WrestleMania 30 is definitely up there as one of the best overall shows of all time, and it was a really, really great performance, and a lot of it is due to the Daniel Bryan story arc that we got. But we're going to be talking a lot about WrestleMania 30, 31, all the way up to his forced retirement and kind of the impact that had, because it impacted a lot of different things, and not just the wrestling fans' mind, but to Daniel Bryan himself. And then when he came back, that's planted the seeds for a lot of other really interesting things that have taken place as well. So with it being WrestleMania season, and a couple weeks ago, it was the anniversary of him coming out and announcing his retirement on Raw, which is still one of the most emotional Monday Night Raw episodes of all time. We thought it would be appropriate to kind of bring up Daniel Bryan and talk about this incredible run that he had going into WrestleMania 30.
I think it's a great way to kick off WrestleMania season for us. There's no more premium live events. I'm trying to get used to saying that. There's no more premium live events between now and WrestleMania. So aside from AEW, but we'll get to that on Wednesday. So the only thing left for us between now and WrestleMania is here we are. It's time to preview. We're on the road. So what better way to kick off? We did a great episode back during the Royal Rumble season about Mick Foley being an unsung hero of Royal Rumble. And I think Daniel Bryan deserves the same spot. In our minds, at least, he's certainly one of the best all-time WrestleMania performers. And we're going to dive into that today.
Yeah. So let's kind of start off with that build to WrestleMania 30. Obviously, kind of talking about that WrestleMania 30, you kind of have to backtrack a little bit to go back to the 2015 Royal Rumble because that's really where the seeds for all of this got planted.
2014 Royal Rumble.
2014.
Yes.
The one in Philly?
2015 was in Philly.
2014 was the one that Batista won. 2014.
That's correct.
Is that one. A lot of people, a lot of fans, and by a lot, I mean probably like 99% of the fans wanted to see Daniel Bryan win the Rumble and go into WrestleMania to challenge for that WWE Championship. And obviously that didn't happen. I think you could even go back a little bit before the Royal Rumble. The pay-per-view slips my mind, but it was the unification between Randy Orton and John Cena.
Right.
I don't remember what pay-per-view that was for. TLC maybe, because I think it was a TLC match. They had that in-ring segment with all the former world champions, and out of everybody in the ring, the only people that they were chanting for, they chanted for CM Punk at the beginning, and then it was nothing but Daniel Bryan chants the entire way through. And so this was the moment that the fans wanted to see Daniel Bryan get back to the top and get his WrestleMania moment.
And I think it also goes back to even further than that, SummerSlam 2013. That's when Daniel Bryan defeated John Cena in a crazy main event for the WWE Championship with Triple H as a special guest referee. And then Randy Orton comes out to cash in. Triple H turns, the Authority is born. And that really set up, the people finally getting their moment. Daniel Bryan has dethroned Super Cena because at this point, Super Cena is at its highest.
Yeah.
Daniel Bryan, the chosen one by the people, not John Cena, who's been shoved down our throat. Daniel Bryan has dethroned Super Cena, all for it to be taken away in about 5 minutes by Triple H and Randy Orton. So immediately, that's the push for WrestleMania. And then, like you said, you got the in-ring segment. Then you've got the Royal Rumble where Daniel Bryan's not even in the match. It's not that he doesn't win the match. He's not even in it.
Yeah.
Get the weight of this, man. I think this is huge. Rey Mysterio was number 30, returning at that Royal Rumble. And he got booed.
Yeah. Not just like upset booed, but like it was raining boos at Rey Mysterio.
Rey Mysterio, not his fault.
No.
One of the most popular wrestlers of all time, but that's how big this movement was in 2014.
And it goes to show that obviously wrestling fans, as the man himself, Daniel Bryan, likes to say, wrestling fans are extremely fickle.
Yes.
But this was one of the moments where nothing was going to deter wrestling fans from not getting Daniel Bryan to the top. And they were going to do everything it took. And it led to one of the best segments on Raw that I can remember, the Occupy Raw. I think it was in Memphis, Tennessee. I think because he got a bunch of fans in the ring and like took over the show until they got that match at WrestleMania, which obviously the build up to it, the setup to it, I love that because I can't remember another time where they kind of did this, where the opening match of WrestleMania, the winner was in the main event of the same night of WrestleMania. And that, to me, that was absolutely brilliant.
The only other time they did something similar was WrestleMania 10. Bret Hart wrestled Owen Hart in the first match, but Bret was already scheduled to face the WWE champion in the main event of the show. So it wasn't like a win and you're in like this situation was, but it's the only time they've done something similar.
And I love the fact that they did it against a guy like Triple H, because if you weren't going to do it against a guy like Cena, Triple H is the next best one, where everybody, especially at the time, was thinking Triple H could win. Like, this isn't a guarantee that they're going to pull the trigger on Daniel Bryan. Like, Triple H could still win this and go to the main event.
2 years later, Triple H wins the Royal Rumble and wins the WWE Championship and main events WrestleMania 2 years later. So, not out of the realm of possibilities.
And, I mean, if you think about it in WWE logic, to my recollection, that would have been the first time that we got, other than Ric Flair involved, an Evolution triple threat.
Yes.
For a championship, which in hindsight sounds like a really big deal.
Right.
But if they would have done that WrestleMania would have ended up being like what the 2015 Royal Rumble would have been, with the boos and the crowd turning on everything. And so kudos to them for putting on that match first and letting Daniel Bryan start the show off hot, and then kind of get that strong build through the rest of the show, especially the post-match beatdown and beating him up, and then Triple H getting involved. All of it was setting up to this amazing moment at the end of the show, that him being crowned the champion.
Yeah, could you imagine the high that those fans were on? Because the show kicks off with Austin, Hogan, and Rock in the ring together. Yep. Then you get Daniel Bryan beating Triple H in a fantastic 25, 30-minute match. Oh, my gosh.
That's why I say it's one of the best ones ever, is because it takes you on the emotional roller coaster the entire pay-per-view. Because you got to remember, that same pay-per-view, Undertaker's first WrestleMania loss happens. And you have the amazing, because WWE production is not always perfect, but what they do after the pin of not playing the music, letting it just be in silence. Justin Roberts even waits like a few seconds after the bell rings to even call the winner of the match, just so you can see the expression on the fans after the Undertaker takes that loss. It's still amazing to go back and watch it.
And I think I remember, I may be misquoting here, but I don't think so, because I recently finished Justin Roberts' book. And I think he said of that situation, because that was the last Mania he ever announced. I think he said of that situation that he waited because he thought there was something wrong. He thought it was a mistake.
Yeah.
He thought they were going to restart the match or whatever. And that's why he waited.
Yeah.
So, but like you said, the weight of all that. Could you imagine? Listen, we're sitting here talking about WrestleMania 30 being one of the best of all time. And there's no doubt that it is. You've got all of these things that happen on the show. You go back and watch it. It's an incredible card, top to bottom. But one guy that got left off of it was CM Punk, because he quit the company about a month before. And could you imagine, recently when Punk was teasing coming back to AEW and all this stuff, he tweeted out his original run sheet for WrestleMania. That, I don't know if you saw this or not, I don't know if everybody that's listening saw this or not, but at the top of the run sheet, it said WrestleMania as of January something, 2014. Punk was the one slated to wrestle Triple H.
Yeah.
Not Daniel Bryan. And it was supposed to be a Randy Orton John Cena singles, or Randy Orton Batista singles match.
Yeah.
There was no win and you're in kind of thing for CM Punk. And Daniel Bryan, who was he scheduled to face?
Sheamus. Always Sheamus. It's always Sheamus.
For the third time in 4 years, Sheamus. Like, just imagine the whole landscape, not just of WrestleMania, but of the wrestling world totally changes if CM Punk doesn't leave. Yeah. So thank you, CM Punk, for leaving and giving us Daniel Bryan.
I mean, yeah, because during that time, obviously, there was a lot of animosity between Punk and WWE because of the 2 years before. I mean, just specifically the year before, when he was WWE champion, held that title for 400 and something days. He held it for, I think he held it through 2 WrestleManias, or he held it through 2 SummerSlams, I think.
2 SummerSlams, one WrestleMania.
And one WrestleMania against Chris Jericho. And even then, like, obviously he wasn't the main event of 29 or 28 because that was Cena Rock 1.
Yep.
And so he was definitely upset about not being in the main event of WrestleMania, even though he just lost the title a couple months ago to The Rock. Putting him in that triple threat, making that a triple threat, which is one of my biggest pet peeves that never happened. Obviously, the Undertaker match is amazing, and I love it, but still being in the triple threat would have been... Anyways, that's another tangent that's a Starrcade 97 moment. But you're right. If Punk doesn't leave, because obviously he didn't want to face Triple H again, and more than likely lose to Triple H again. He didn't want to do that. Obviously, Sheamus and Daniel Bryan, you can honestly say that the Yes movement and the WrestleMania push started at WrestleMania 28 when he lost in 13 seconds to Sheamus.
Yep.
And so that kind of has been a part of this. And then, honestly, nobody wants to see a Randy Orton versus Batista singles match at WrestleMania for the WWE Championship.
Not in 2014.
Nobody in 2019? Nobody really wanted to see a Batista Triple H singles match at WrestleMania either.
I did. I wanted to see that one. But that's just me because I'm a fanboy. No, like, you would, I think in 2005, 2006, you could have pulled off Randy Batista at WrestleMania in a singles match for the title. That's believable. Okay, cool. But no, not in 2014, especially Batista being the guy that returns and is going to win the Rumble and, all that kind of stuff. No, you don't want that.
It honestly would be like if they did Randy Orton versus John Cena one more time at WrestleMania, like this year. That's one of those of like, we have seen that match to death. We don't need to see it again. We've seen these guys at the top. We don't need to see both of them again. Now, if they did just a singles match at WrestleMania, that's one thing. But for the title specifically,
no. Yeah, they don't need definitely not at this point.
But so you kind of get this build up to WrestleMania. Obviously, Daniel Bryan wins the first match against Triple H. Kudos to Triple H and Stephanie. I love the way they sold the pure anger in their face after the match was over. They beat down on Daniel Bryan. They play off. They do the whole, will he be able to even make it to the main event now, whatever.
Right.
You go through a really great WrestleMania card that had really high highs, really low lows, some questionable booking decisions. John Cena versus Bray Wyatt, Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar, kind of some of those things. You get to the main event, and this triple threat is really good.
Yes,
And
it
I
is.
think, I mean, Randy Orton is really good when he cares. Batista is Batista. He does what he does really well, and then outside of that, he's kind of whatever.
Same. Yes.
All this whole triple threat, I think, is really good just because of
Mhm.
Daniel Bryan being in it. I mean, because you have the table spot with the power bomb into the RKO that is a nasty bump to take for both Randy Orton and Daniel Bryan.
Yep.
And then they play it off of, like, I think they almost do a stretcher job at one point, and you have Randy Orton versus Batista, and the fans are getting a little freaked out by it. You get the false finish of Daniel Bryan hitting the running knee on Randy Orton, Batista throwing him out of the ring and making the cover, which got me when I was watching it.
Yep.
And then you go through all of the highs and lows, and Daniel Bryan ends up winning the WWE Championship. Michael Cole gets a lot of flack for a lot of things. He has 2 WrestleMania lines that I love so much. The first one is WrestleMania 31 when Seth Rollins wins the WWE Championship. The heist of the century is amazing. WrestleMania 30, Miracle on Bourbon Street is amazing. I just got chill bumps just saying it.
Yeah, when you go back and watch the 24 episode about Daniel Bryan's retirement speech, which I did in preparation for this, when you go back and watch that, when Michael Cole, it goes through like the last 5 minutes or so is just everybody saying thank you to Bryan for different reasons, and Michael Cole says thank you for one of the greatest WrestleMania call of my career.
Yeah.
So I mean that goes to show you right there, and he's had plenty of other ones after that, but those are the Bryan one and the Rollins one, like you said, are 2 that he'll probably be remembered for a long time.
Yeah, and just the moment itself of him winning is one of the greatest WrestleMania moments of all time, if not the greatest WrestleMania moment of all time, because it's one of the few times where, the fans got what they wanted at WrestleMania. Obviously, a couple years later, Daniel Bryan plays another pivotal role in giving the fans what they want, which we'll get to that here in a little bit. But it's one of those of the WWE fans were not going to let this WrestleMania go on without Daniel Bryan winning, or at least being involved and then winning. And kudos to WWE for pulling the trigger on it.
I mean, you imagine the heel heat that one of those guys would have gotten had he not won.
Yeah.
Which would have been great storytelling, but you got to send everybody home happy. This was the story of Daniel Bryan and the unfortunate circumstances that surround everything after this. Obviously, we'll never know what this story could have continued to be after WrestleMania, but for that one night, Daniel Bryan was king of pro wrestling.
Yeah, he was. Which also, kind of throwing this in there before we move on, this is also the same night that Connor was there for the Connor's cure and everything else, and that whole story, and it's just absolutely beautiful and amazing. The start of that relationship and friendship. But then going on from there, obviously, Daniel Bryan has had a history of injuries that have plagued him over the years. And it seemed like once he got rolling once again, injuries kind of plagued him again. I don't exactly remember how long after WrestleMania.
It's not long.
It was like a month, maybe 2 months.
Maybe 2. Yeah,
something
maybe
like that.
Yep.
He had to relinquish the titles due to injury. I believe it was another neck injury that he had been dealing with. He had to have neck surgery. And so Daniel Bryan is out for now. And I think we go the whole year without seeing him. I don't think we see him again until right before the Rumble.
Yeah, something like that.
Another pet peeve of mine. I mean, he was going to be in the Rumble. Could you imagine if the fans in Philly didn't know he was going to be there, the pop that would have happened when he came back would have been absolutely amazing.
Yep.
We get to the Royal Rumble 2015. He's in the Royal Rumble. He comes in at number 12, 13. He comes in pretty early, and he lasts like it seems
Not
like
long.
15 minutes. Gets eliminated by Bray Wyatt, and then the Rumble is out the window at that point.
Right.
Roman gets booed out of the building. The Rock gets booed out of the building. The finish to that Rumble is still baffling to me that they thought that would be a great way to get Roman over, of having the Big Show and Kane just kind of slowly eliminate people as they go along is very boring.
Well, I mean, you got to think too. When you're building a new star, it's hard to build a new star, number one.
Yeah.
It's even harder to build a new star when the fans want somebody else.
Yep.
So I don't want to say that WWE's booking was questionable of Roman Reigns for that Rumble, because I do think he was the right guy to win the Rumble if that's the guy you're pushing. But no matter what WWE does, when it comes to a situation like Daniel Bryan, you're not going to change the fans' mind. No matter what you do.
Yeah.
So I think WWE was trying here. I think they redeemed themselves, obviously, at WrestleMania 31 by going a complete opposite direction with the championship. Yeah. And again, giving the fans what they wanted, and pivoting Roman until a little while later, because it would have been natural to see Rollins and Roman after WrestleMania going at it, and that didn't happen. So kudos to WWE for that. But you got to think, man, WWE's been in this business for a long time. Vince McMahon's been doing this since 1982. Yeah. Like, some things are going to work and some things aren't, but kudos to them for finding a way to see, okay, this is not working, let's pivot, and they pivoted well.
Yeah, they absolutely did. But going into WrestleMania 31, we weren't sure what Daniel Bryan's role on the card was going to be.
Right.
A lot of people feared that he may just fall back down the card and not be taken seriously as he once was heading into WrestleMania 30. Obviously, though, we have that he's involved in an 8-man ladder match at WrestleMania for the IC title, which is an amazing
car crash of a match. Oh,
because you've got, I'm trying to think who's in it. You had Dean Ambrose, you had Cesaro.
Nope, Cesaro.
No, you had Dean Ambrose, you had Daniel Bryan, you had Luke Harper,
Dolph Ziggler,
Stardust.
I'm blanking.
Was Zack Ryder in it?
No. Let's see. Bryan, Stardust, Luke Harper, Dolph Ziggler, Wade Barrett. Because he was the champion going into it.
Yeah, Ryback. Was Ryback in this one?
No.
Ryback was.
I just watched it this morning. Why can I not think of the other person that was in this match? Anyway, regardless, really good match, really big car crash of a match, and R-Truth. That's the other one.
R-Truth.
Yeah, he's kind of thrown in there. Bryan coming out on top, winning the Intercontinental title, and then a month later, the world goes round and round again.
Yep. He gets another injury, has to take some time off, relinquishes the IC title. I believe that year the Elimination Chamber happened after WrestleMania. Probably. Because you had the Elimination Chamber match to win the IC title, which was won by Ryback in the Elimination Chamber. And Daniel Bryan's in the ring with him, gives him the IC title. And then, we're on the bill to WrestleMania 32. We are waiting every kind of week to see what the Daniel Bryan status is going to be.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, he's pretty much off TV at this point. He's not doing anything, right?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think he's there if he's there, it's a backstage segment or two or whatever, but he's not really there doing anything. And so we're on the build to WrestleMania 32. We're in Seattle, and that's when the announcement happens. Daniel Bryan gets in the ring and announces that he has to be forced to retire from professional wrestling due to neck injuries. I mean, I think it was the same exact neck injury or very similar to the neck injury that Edge had to retire with.
He had the neck injury and he had the neck surgery.
Yeah.
That was after WrestleMania 30, and they said he was only going to be out for 8 weeks, but it took him 8 months to recover because he couldn't get strength back in his arm. Yeah. Well, then he started getting concussions again, and what it ended up happening is I watched the 24, like I said earlier, about his retirement, and he said that he was not upfront with WWE as far as how many concussions he actually had. So when he had to relinquish the IC title, he was up front with them, and then after so long went by, some doctors cleared him, and Dr. Maroon, WWE's main doctor, would never clear him because he said, in good conscience, I can't clear you because I know what your history is.
Right.
So it was neck injuries, concussions, everything just kind of compounded into perfect storm, really.
Yeah, because I believe there was a match on Raw after WrestleMania 31, possibly. I think so. Where he went to do that suicide dive that he does and hit his head on he like crunched his neck, like his head and neck on the barricade. And I believe Triple H from the back forced the match to be stopped.
Yes.
And Daniel Bryan obviously was not happy about it because I think it was in the 24 segment. He even said to Triple H, "You have wrestled through worse." And did not stop the match. Don't you dare stop one of my matches. And so obviously WWE had Daniel Bryan's health in their mind of trying to protect him as much as they could.
Right.
But I'm sure, and I think he may have mentioned this in the 24 because I didn't get to watch it, but I vaguely remember watching it. I believe there was some betrayal feelings from Daniel Bryan towards WWE of you're taking this away from me and you're not letting me get back in the ring and do what I love to do.
Yeah, because he said, if that's the case, he said, and if you, Dr. Maroon, won't clear me, I'll go to every other doctor that I can and have them clear me to help build my case. And then as it kind of continued to go, Bryan slowly but surely realized, hey, this is not happening. Yeah, this is not good.
Yeah. But going back to that night, man, in Seattle, one of the most emotional speeches, you could tell how heartbroken he was to have to come out and make that speech. And obviously, with most cases like this, there's a chance of it being. I think after the whole Mark Henry retirement speech, there's always a chance that it's a work.
Well, I remember thinking it was a work because this was during the day and age where stuff did not get leaked out ahead of time.
Right.
Or if it got leaked out, it was an angle. You know what I mean? So nowadays we see a lot of things that get leaked out early in the day before a show, as first reported by Sports Illustrated or blah, 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 whatever. And that ends up being part of, whatever's happening. Well, in 2016, that wasn't a thing. So when Bryan tweets out, "Hey, I've got to retire," oh, it's a work. It has to be a work. And then
very quickly into his speech, you could tell this is not a work. This is legit. That 24 special, seeing the moments before he goes out it's hard to watch. I mean, it really is. It's hard to watch. The anxiety that you can see on his face of having to go out there and spill his feelings to the world and telling them that he's not going to be able to do the thing that he loves most is so heartbreaking to watch. And that night, man, it was such like kudos to them for always, putting on the show, going on like the show must go on mentality, which for better or worse is sometimes good, sometimes is not the best case.
Right.
But this one, man, it was hard. I don't even remember anything else from that Monday Night Raw other than his retirement, other than him kind of going out there and spilling his guts. And yeah, it seemed like that was the end of Daniel Bryan. Not necessarily like him in him wrestling. It was the end of it seemed like, but obviously he was always going to be a part of professional wrestling, whether it was on the indie scene, whether it was backstage in WWE and NXT, whatever the case was. It seemed like Daniel Bryan that we knew and loved in an instant was just gone, and it was heartbreaking.
Yep, absolutely. And you got to think the same thing happened with Edge several years back. And let's equate that to a couple of years later when Roman Reigns has his bout with leukemia. It's always heartbreaking when real life gets in the way of our fantasy world of wrestling, because we sometimes forget that these guys are real life people until real life actually gets in the way. We've accustomed and learned our brain to the fact that injuries are part of the game. Okay, man, that sucks that guy got hurt, but they'll be back.
Right.
Well, this is a little bit different. So anytime stuff like this gets in the way, man, it sucks. It really
does. And so it kind of seemed like, that was it for Daniel Bryan. Obviously, 2016, so later that year, we do the draft, we do the brand split between Raw and SmackDown.
Yep.
And brilliant decision by WWE to have Daniel Bryan kind of come out and be the SmackDown general manager.
Yep.
I think that's part of the reason why SmackDown in 2016 is some of WWE's best stuff in the last decade.
Yep.
Because every single week you had to watch, because it was great matches. It was during that time where there was way too many pay-per-views because you had 2 a month. You had your Raw pay-per-view and your SmackDown pay-per-view. I can't really remember any matches from the Raw side that were decent or great, like that I can remember.
Rollins and Balor from that SummerSlam.
Yeah, that one was good, other than the crowd kind of taking over because of the big red gym belt.
Well, yeah,
but the match itself was really good,
yeah.
but that was plagued by injury afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
Which kind of takes away somewhat from it. I believe, was it that same year? No, it was a couple years later that we got Joe versus Lesnar.
That was
2018.
That was 18.
Yeah.
Yep.
But 2016, man, you had so many great matches on SmackDown. Daniel Bryan.
Sorry, 2017. 2017 for Joe and Lesnar.
Yeah.
It was after Lesnar.
It was after that SummerSlam
Goldberg.
match. It was after that SummerSlam match as well.
Yep.
That was amazing. But 2016 SmackDown was killing it every single week, every single pay-per-view they were killing it. So we go through WrestleMania 33, WrestleMania kind of goes on, WrestleMania 32, then WrestleMania 33 without Daniel Bryan, and then on the road to WrestleMania 34, Daniel Bryan is still the general manager of SmackDown. Shane McMahon is in this really weird feud at the time, which, shocker, Shane's in a weird feud between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and out of nowhere, it gets reported very quickly and very early on. I think on Friday, like the day, or I think the day of, it gets reported Daniel Bryan has been cleared to get back in the ring. And
because SmackDown was on Tuesday at that point.
Yeah, Tuesday.
So I think it was day of that. I think it was
day of day of. I get the report. I think Bleacher Report was one of the first ones that reported it. Of Daniel Bryan has been cleared to compete in WWE, and I remember exactly where I was sitting when I got that alert, and I remember thinking, "There's no way. There is absolutely no way that this has happened."
I remember not necessarily see where I was when I saw it, but I do remember my first thought, because we're in 2018. We're in March of 2018 at this point. And WrestleMania 34 is, we're probably 3 weeks away from WrestleMania 34 when this happens. And my tickets for WrestleMania 34, my reservations for WrestleMania 34 are bought, paid for, taken care of, like ready to go. Then we get the news of Daniel Bryan. So I remember thinking, holy cow. My first WrestleMania just got a lot better. Like, it was going to be great anyway, but we just took it to another level, because there's no way. I thought in my head, there's no way, if he is cleared and ready to go, that they will leave him off that card. There's no way.
There's no way. And I love the fact that, obviously, if you're going to bring him back, they're going to bring him back kind of slowly.
Sure.
They're not going to just throw him in there and let him have an hour-long barn burner, which he could have. I mean, he could have tore the house down with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn at WrestleMania.
I think there was a rumor at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think there was a rumor at the time that they were going to still try and do the tag match without Bryan being cleared, and he was either just going to like stand on the apron, or he was going to do very, very minimal stuff just so they could get by and do the tag match.
Yeah.
So I think they had kind of planned it, but then when Bryan got cleared, all bets were off.
Yeah, because I remember the SmackDown that he got cleared. He ended the show. He was cutting the promo at the end of the show.
So he started the show with his "Hey, I'm cleared" promo, whatever, and then the end of the show, it comes back out with KO and Sami.
He comes back out with KO and Sami, and I'm thinking, he's not going to take anything crazy. He's not going to do anything crazy just yet. And then Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn attack him, and he takes the freaking powerbomb on the apron, which always looks so brutal. Kevin Owens knows how to just sling people into that thing.
Yep.
And once he started taking, I've never been so happy though to see a man take bumps.
I know,
before.
me too.
Like I was so happy to see him take those bumps because I think we all were waiting afterwards to see like, okay, was he fine? Is everything okay? Is everything good?
Yep.
And from that point on, we were running to WrestleMania 34.
Yep.
Tag match between Shane, Daniel Bryan, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn. I love the fact that I believe Kevin and Sami jumped Daniel Bryan before the match started.
Yes,
so they made the fans wait for Daniel Bryan to get involved. But once that tag happened, and once he got in, it was like going back to WrestleMania 30 all over again.
Yes, it was.
Our boy is back in the ring, back at WrestleMania, back where he belongs, and we were off from there.
Not only back, but back in the Superdome, where the last time he was in the Superdome, he won the World Heavyweight Championship. So I can remember vividly being in the Superdome, getting ready for this match, and his intro package hitting, not his normal intro video or theme music or whatever, but that special Yes Movement package that they put together. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You talk about a chill bump moment. It was insane.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. And so get through WrestleMania 34. He is back full time, back in wrestling. And very quickly, I was shocked that this kind of happened because this was still 2016 through 2018 on SmackDown was a great time to watch SmackDown. Like it was week to week, really, really strong. There were some moments in between. Obviously, you had the infamous Jinder Mahal run of WWE champion, loses the title to AJ Styles, and then we have a random SmackDown match between AJ and Daniel Bryan for the WWE championship. Daniel Bryan turns heel and wins the WWE championship and shocked everybody.
I was so mad.
I was so mad too, but the character that we got with Daniel Bryan as a heel was amazing.
I remember vividly where I was sitting and what I was doing during that match, because that was back when this podcast was called the Music City Mania podcast. Jason, and I are recording an episode when this happens. We are previewing Survivor Series, thinking we are AJ Styles, Brock Lesnar Part 2. It's going to be a great match, whatever. We are recording an episode when it happens. We literally stopped our discussion. Guys, Daniel Bryan just won the WWE Championship. And the whole show changed.
Yeah.
So it was fantastic.
Oh yeah. The heel turn that we got with him, because I think part of the things that we were all thinking is Daniel Bryan's going to be a face for life. Now he's one of the few guys that's like a face for life. He's never going to turn heel. Rey Mysterio, Sting, Undertaker, Jeff Hardy. They're never going to be heels probably ever again. Right. And Daniel Bryan was like, watch me. It turned into an amazing heel during that run. That match with Brock Lesnar, I've never been so scared in my life to watch a Brock Lesnar match. And no, it was probably going to be fine.
Sure.
But the way he was selling the neck and everything else.
Yep.
And then, just like the AJ Styles match before, he got you on a couple false finishes. You thought Daniel Bryan was going to beat Brock. We head into WrestleMania 35. You're wearing the hat. Kofi Mania is running wild on WWE, and a part of that is due to Daniel Bryan as the heel champion, making Kofi Kingston feel like Daniel Bryan did in WrestleMania 30. In all honesty, that whole story was almost, I'm not going to say copy and paste because there were two different things, but the same outline was followed to get to WrestleMania 35. And one of the best WrestleMania moments still is when Kofi Kingston beats Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship, and that is due to the character that Daniel Bryan was and playing that pivotal part.
Yeah, being in the building that night, I mean, the pop when Seth Rollins won the Universal title was out of this world because it was the first match of the night. Nobody expected that to be the first match of the night, and we were all incredibly excited that it actually happened that way. And the pop for Becky Lynch winning the winner-take-all match at the end of the night, it was a kind of, okay, thank God this WrestleMania is over with. Yay, Becky wins, but can we all go home? We were all exhausted. And I was thinking about this as I rewatched Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston today. I think the reason that WrestleMania was so exhausting, every single match had a video package before the match. Every single one of them. And so that was like, oh my gosh. you're spending 5 minutes on this video package where we could already be in the ring, and you can add 5 minutes to the match, a good match, and make it more memorable, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but all of that to say, the pop when Kofi Kingston won the championship was the most legit pop of the night.
Yeah.
Wasn't fabricated. It wasn't enhanced. It wasn't any of that. It was the most legit pop of the night. Now, what, again, much like Daniel Bryan, Kofi Kingston didn't get injured, but what happened after that, we'll talk about that another time. But for that night, Daniel Bryan putting Kofi Kingston over, I mean, what a moment.
I don't think it was necessarily to the same level as Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, but it's probably the closest we might get to it. As of right now, the closest we might get to it is Kofi winning that championship at WrestleMania. Just the fact that the way, because I even remember at the Elimination Chamber a couple of months before, and you got down to Kofi and Daniel Bryan, and the crowd, and I think it was Houston, Texas, the crowd was fully behind Kofi. I mean, they were on every single last thing that he did. And when he was in the ring by himself and the crowd was chanting and cheering for him, I think we all thought this has to be WrestleMania. This has to be leading to Kofi versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. And I don't think, same thing with Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, I don't think that was the original plan for WrestleMania, was Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston.
No, and I don't think it was set in stone until that Elimination Chamber night.
I think that night changed everything.
Yep, I do too. Because, again, if you believe the reports that you read online, it was supposed to be Ali. Could you imagine Daniel Bryan versus Ali at WrestleMania? I'm not taking anything away from Mustafa Ali, because he's a very talented wrestler, but come on, could you imagine?
They had built him up to that point, like Kofi had been built up, and I think.
And I don't think Mustafa Ali and Daniel Bryan could have survived the 7-hour marathon that was WrestleMania. Like, that match would have gotten lost in the weeds just like the rest of them. And Kofi at least made it stand out.
Kofi versus Daniel Bryan, I would say, was a lot of people's most anticipated match of the night. Like, that was the moment that everybody was waiting for. I think that could have, if you would have swapped the women's triple threat and that match at the end, I still think the same pop would have happened for Kofi, because that's the build that everybody wanted to see. That's the moment everybody wanted to see. And so, obviously a lot of that is due to Kofi Kingston and his lovable, likable character that he is. But you also have to give Daniel Bryan credit for every Batman, there's a Joker that makes Batman look awesome.
Absolutely.
And that was it. That was the moment. That was absolutely amazing. And so WrestleMania 35 happens. Daniel Bryan loses the WWE Championship to Kofi Kingston. We go into WrestleMania 36, which is obviously the saddest WrestleMania of all time, probably. No fans, nothing. Pandemic, it's in the PC. No crowd reaction at all. Daniel Bryan wrestles, but I do not remember who he wrestles, because I don't remember that WrestleMania.
He wrestled Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental title.
That's right.
Lost.
That's right. The only thing I remember from that Mania is Brock and Drew and the Firefly Funhouse, because that match was awesome. Boneyard and Seth and KO. Other than that, I don't remember anything else from that WrestleMania because of the pandemic era.
Edge and Randy Orton.
Oh yeah, the hour-long marathon that was. Yeah. So then 36 kind of comes and goes. Then we move into last year's WrestleMania 37. Amazing triple threat between Daniel Bryan, Roman Reigns, and Edge for the WWE, for the Universal Championship. This match,
probably top 5 match of the year in WWE.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. One of the best WrestleMania main events of the last couple of years that I can remember, probably since 31 and 30 that I can remember.
Yeah.
Probably because 34 was not it. 35 was iffy.
Yep.
33 was Roman Taker, which 32 was not it. So probably 31 and then 30. And but the triple threat was absolutely amazing. All three guys are at the top of their game at this point, including Edge, which I know Edge is a legend, but I think he's doing better work now than probably he's ever done in his career. And just the fact that we got this match at WrestleMania was absolutely amazing. I think we were at your house watching it, and it was just amazing to watch it.
Well, the fact that we got this match when we weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
None of these three guys were supposed to be there. Roman with his leukemia, Edge with his neck, Bryan with his concussion. At one point, all three of them were said, nope, not coming back.
Yep.
Nope, you can't do it. And here we are.
Yeah.
You know? So for the fact that none of them were supposed to be there, that carries enough weight in and of itself. Then the story that they told in the match that they put on and the talent that they have, and oh my gosh, just absolutely incredible. If Edge and Seth Rollins don't tear the house down later in the year, this triple threat match is match of the year, I think.
Yeah, but I think there's one other contender that we kind of have to talk about before putting a bow on this episode, and that is the Smackdown match between Roman and Daniel Bryan. That was also match of the year candidate, because obviously the storyline going into that, Roman says if you lose, you're out. It's like you're done. You're not. You're off SmackDown.
Right.
You're completely gone. I love the fact that they don't even mention like you're out of WWE, but they said you're out, like you're done on SmackDown.
Yeah.
He wrestles Roman Reigns in an amazing match. Obviously, he loses that match, and then a couple months later, he makes one of the best debuts in pro wrestling history with Adam Cole and AEW, and kind of has not lost a step there as well, putting on amazing matches with Kenny Omega, Adam Hangman Page. A couple weeks ago, we got the privilege of watching Bryan Danielson versus Lee Moriarty in the ring. This past Dynamite, him versus Daniel Garcia was amazing. So it seems like he is kind of on the rise. But if you would have asked us a couple years ago, if you would have told us a couple years ago that this is the Daniel Bryan / Bryan Danielson that we get, I don't think we would have believed you at all.
Well, and I think it's a situation of Bryan finishing up his career the way Bryan wants to finish up his career. And that's not to say that WWE was going to do him wrong, because let's face it, Daniel Bryan is one of the few guys in WWE that I think they can't screw up.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is, will they put him in the best match all the time? No, probably not. But we talked about how much of a lovable guy he is, and such a stand-up guy, and he's a company guy, and he's so grateful for the opportunity that he has and the platform that he has been given. He's willing to do what it takes. And a lot of people say that, but few people I feel like actually live it. And Vince McMahon believes that Bryan lives that.
Yep.
So they're going to not screw up with Daniel Bryan. So had he stayed in WWE, would he have had a fantastic end to his career? Yeah, he probably would have. But there's a lot of things that Bryan wanted to do that he hasn't gotten to do in a long time. He's been in WWE for 11 years?
Like
Just some things that Bryan wanted to do, and is a guy that holds no ill will towards WWE.
No. And they hold no ill will towards him. I mean, if you look at the contract that they offered him that he refused, part of the contract was that he was allowed to go and wrestle at the G1 Climax in New Japan.
Yep.
Like, who else would they do that for other than Daniel Bryan? That's how much they not necessarily trusted him, but that's how much they wanted him.
They value him.
And they value him, which, as an independent guy, because Bryan Danielson through and through is an indie wrestler at heart. At the beginning of his run, we never would have thought that this is the respect, I think, that Vince McMahon has for Daniel Bryan. I don't think we would have thought we got to this point.
And to piggyback on that, look how many guys he blazed the trail for.
Yeah.
I mean, the impact that Daniel Bryan Danielson has had on the wrestling business is second to none as far as blazing a trail, because if there's no Daniel Bryan in WWE, there's no Seth Rollins,
there's no AJ Styles,
there's no AJ Styles, there's no Cesaro, there's no Kevin Owens, there's Finn Balor, Sami Zayn. None of those guys make it. None of them.
Because of him. And honestly, because of Daniel Bryan, I don't think we would have gotten NXT. Like the NXT that we got would have never happened, because unless Daniel Bryan had come in and had the success that he had on the main roster. And when he first debuted, obviously he got fired pretty quickly for choking out Justin Roberts with the tie. But honestly, they quickly realized, I think, how valuable he was to bring him back in that quickly.
Yep.
And then after his return, a couple months later, I think he won the U.S. title off the Miz. So like he was never misused. I'm not gonna say misused. He was never a lower than mid card guy in WWE's eyes. He was never a jobber. He was never what a Sami Zayn kind of is now, in a lot of retrospect.
Ricochet.
Yeah, he's not. He was never a Ricochet level, but he worked and worked and worked to get to that main event status. And Vince saw that and respected it, and has kind of left him to that point where I honestly believe that there's still an open door policy of, hey, if you want to come back, give us a call. You can come back.
Listen, he'll be if nothing else, if he doesn't ever wrestle a match for WWE again, he'll be inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
Yep, I completely agree with that. And if he's not, then that's a shame. I think between him and Chris Jericho, that's absolutely true. I think Chris Jericho could call Vince at any second and say, "All right, I'm done." he's
for example, not to go down that huge rabbit hole about Chris Jericho, but for example, a couple of weeks ago, he revealed on his podcast that he wanted to go to Japan.
Yep.
And wrestle.
He wanted to wrestle.
No, it was Madison Square Garden.
He wanted to wrestle. Tanahashi.
Yeah,
Tanahashi at Madison Square Garden.
And both, not just Tony Khan, but Vince McMahon asked him not to do it.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show, yes, Jericho did Broken Skull Sessions last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he cleared everything with Vince before he went to AEW. Yes, all that, it just shows they have a good relationship. But for the fact that recent, that they still have that close of contact, oh yeah, Jericho's coming back one day.
Yeah. Sure. I think you could say the same thing about Big Show and about Mark Henry, more than likely. All those legend guys that have kind of left, maybe not Christian, but all those legend guys that have gone to AEW to, whatever their reason is, for Jericho to kind of reinvent himself even more, for Bryan Danielson to go out and have these independent 5-star classic matches that he wants to have.
Yep.
All those guys are guys that I think there are more than likely open door policies to come back, even for maybe a guy like Jon Moxley. There might be an open door policy on WWE's side. I don't think on Jon Moxley's side. I don't think Moxley wants to go back, but WWE, I don't think they would ever turn him down if he ever decided to come back.
Right.
And I mean, for what it's worth, I think if Punk wanted to come back, they would find a way to bring Punk back as well.
They would.
I don't think he ever wants to go back, but that's part of the thing of, like, with this whole Daniel Bryan thing. When you earn Vince's respect in that sort of way, he doesn't really care if you leave or not. Like, if you leave, fine, you leave. There's no hard feeling. He's a businessman at heart. He knows if that's what's best for your business, have at it. If you want to come back, have at it. And I think that's why guys like him and Daniel Bryan and John Cena and The Rock and Brock Lesnar, like, love him or hate him, they all get the business aspect of this, and they understand that.
Yep. Oh, 100%. You're 100% right. And, kudos to Daniel Bryan for being that guy, not only for earning Vince's respect, but earning Vince's respect at the same time that the fans are really getting behind you, creating this perfect storm for probably top 5 most popular wrestler of all time. Yeah. Easily. I would think.
Say so.
I mean, he's in an elite class with probably Sting, Jeff Hardy, probably like a Rey Mysterio,
Undertaker,
Daniel Bryan, The Undertaker. Yeah. He's in an elite class of the most popular guys of all time. He really is.
Yep, absolutely. All right, anything else you wanted to add before we put a bow on this week's episode, man? It was fun going back and looking at Daniel Bryan's career, one of the greatest in-ring professional wrestlers of all time, honestly. Yep. One of the most lovable guys, like we just said, of all time. It was a lot of fun going back and looking at this.
Yeah, it absolutely was. 2 things that I want to add before we sign off, and I'll make these quick. Number 1, just feeling the weight of the trail that Daniel Bryan has blazed for WWE superstars, especially going back through this episode. Man, if you don't feel the weight of his legacy and what he did in WWE, man, you just need to go back and watch some of this stuff, because he truly is one of the great WWE superstars. I don't want to say greatest of all time, but the dude is just, like I said, blazed the trail for so many great people. I'm thankful for him because there would never be an AJ Styles in WWE if it had not been for Daniel Bryan. The second thing that I want to say is we've talked about how great Daniel Bryan is. Talked about how awesome all these great matches that he has, 5-star classics in WWE, out of WWE, blah, 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 blah. Just so you all know, he was trained by the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. I'm going to leave it at that. For those of you who do not put Shawn Michaels as one of the best of all time, just remember who he trained. I'm just saying.
That's a hot topic for another podcast, especially with some other things. But yeah, no, you're completely right. I think that part definitely plays a massive role in it. Like, Shawn Michaels is one of the greatest in-ring performers of all time, if not the greatest of all time, and you can see Shawn-like things in Daniel Bryan's wrestling.
Sure.
And that's it. Because a little rabbit hole tangent. Like, Daniel Bryan's great in the ring. He's a technician, but he understands all the other like aspects of pro wrestling that make pro wrestling. It's not just really cool moves or things like that. His style of wrestling could be very boring if anybody else was doing it, but the fact that he does it the way he does it as a technician, as a submission guy, is amazing to see. It's so
absolutely great to see. It is. You're 100% right.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this Monday edition of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to us each and every week. We really appreciate it. Come back and listen to us on Wednesday, as we are going to be diving into a lot of fun and interesting topics from this week in wrestling. Obviously, some of the bigger news that has come out as of recording this episode, obviously, with Cesaro no longer being in WWE, and we seem like we have our 2 main events set up for WrestleMania Night 1 and Night 2 has already been announced, as well as some other things as well, barring a Stone Cold and a Cody Rhodes showing up on Monday Night Raw. Hopefully nothing else super crazy happens this week, but you can never know what else. But come check us out on Wednesday right here on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel.
And don't forget, we talked about AEW a minute ago. Revolution's coming up this weekend. Previewing Revolution this week with our special guest, Mr. Trent Osborne. So a loaded show again coming up this week.
If you love Bryan Danielson or Daniel Bryan, you're going to get a lot of talk about him because he is having a match against Jon Moxley at Revolution that I have a feeling will be bloody, will be brutal, and will be amazing. So be prepared for us to talk about that on Wednesday as well. Me and Chris and Trent as we come and preview and talk about that. But yeah, if you're listening to us right now on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you can see not just our videos and our podcasts, but all the other amazing content that is on this YouTube channel. Thank you to our partners over at SportsWire for always playing our episodes and always playing our shows. We really appreciate you guys. Go check them out and go listen to their show, the other shows that are on there as well. And if you're listening to this on a more traditional audio platform, make sure you leave that rate and review, share it with your friends, because Daniel Bryan is a big part of all of our wrestling fandom, and we want to share the love and talk about him with everybody. So share this episode around with your friends. We would really appreciate that as well. But yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode. We really appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to us. For Chris, I'm Andy York, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.